Sir, thanks for joining us today on Leadership Log, which is a podcast for the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center community on topics of interest. And certainly a topic of interest today is this new CUI, Controlled Unclassified Information category that's coming along. People are hearing about, but probably don't know a lot about. Hopefully you're going to explain that for us today. But before we get into that, if you could just introduce yourself to our audience and give us a little bit of background on your career.
Hello, I'm Jeff Hetzler. I'm the Information Security Lead for the AFLCMC Information Protection Office. I've been doing this job for approximately 42 years. That includes military service. I was in the military, retired military, Air Force, 24 years.
Great. So I'm sure you're familiar with then, and we all are. I mean, you can't have been involved in the military for any length of time and not know what the letters FOUO stands for. It's one of those universal acronyms for official use only. And now that is going to be going away. We've used this for information that needed to be protected, but wasn't necessarily classified. And now we're going to this controlled unclassified information. So if you could just give us kind of a high-level view of what is CUI.
CUI more or less standardizes how we handle information that requires protection by law, regulation, or even government-wide policy. So basically, the executive branch of the United States government has developed one standard for protecting CUI, and it requires individual agencies to conform to these standards.
Okay, and so in the short term, what exactly is going to be replaced or canceled?
Well, there's the DoD instruction 5248, which is the new instruction for controlled unclassified information, and that replaces and cancels DoD manual 5200.01 volume 4, the old controlled unclassified information instruction. Also, there was an Air Force guidance manual that was recently implemented and for CUI, and it supersedes sections of AFI 16-1404, the Air Force Information Security Program, where the designation of FOUO is referenced.
Okay. And are there differences between FOUO and CUI?
The handling and marking of a CUI are similar. There are some changes in the way we mark CUI. Previously, FOUO was protected under the 9 Freedom of Information Act FOIA exemptions, whereas CUI is a safeguarding or dissemination control requiring protection by, again, a law, regulation, or government-wide policy.
Okay. So does that mean that CUI information would be releasable under FOIA, or?
It's not releasable under FOIA. Primarily, the owner of that information can release that information. FOIA is FOIA is mostly a statutory requirement, and it would have to go through the review process to be released.
Okay. I've heard that this is being implemented, this change to CUI is being introduced in a phased approach. What does that mean exactly?
CUI is being implemented in a phased approach. You have CUI Basic, which is basic protection and handling methods of CUI. CUI Specified, which is a subset of CUI, and it requires special handling controls. Now, when DoD initially implemented the CUI program, they did not address the distinction between CUI Basic and CUI Specified, but forthcoming guidance is forthcoming, and it will define the 2 levels, which includes the list of which categories are basic and which categories are specified, and also the unique requirements for each to include markings.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the differences between basic and specified, or?
Yeah, the major differences are, and mostly we don't want to get wrapped around the wheel here too much, is it's pretty much similar. There are a few changes, and I'll go over some of the few changes that we have. Before in FOUO, or for official use only, there was 1 marking required, and that was at the bottom of the page, at least on the first page, and then each page thereafter. Now, on the banner line, the header and footer, CUI, just the letters CUI, are annotated at the top and bottom of the first page and each page thereafter. Also, portion markings are optional. However, if people do use portion markings, then the entire document has to be portion marked. But if, like I said, they are optional, if you use the optional method, then all you need to do is just mark the banner line CUI at the top and bottom of the page.
Okay.
Now, CUI documents, this is the biggest change right here. Each CUI document will contain a CUI designation indicator box on the first page or the cover page of the document. And they're identifying the DoD component that created the document. You're also identifying the office that created the document. You identify the CUI category that pertains to the specific document. And there are 21 categories with 135 subcategories that will be employed with this CUI designation. You'll also provide a distribution and dissemination controls for that particular document, and then also the POC or the owner of the CUI document. Not only that, also it includes your media and storage devices that carry CUI markings, and then also your designation indicator and your markings will be carried over to those storage devices.
So is part of this change, is it to help the user that comes across this document to know who they can go back and contact if they have a question about why it was marked a certain way? Or
that's the primary purpose. In the past with the FOUO, you really didn't know who the document belonged to. And I think this will assist or help the individual try to attempt to find the owner of the document if need be, if they have questions.
okay, all right. And you mentioned portion control. So like that's where you designate the information in a specific paragraph. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so you don't necessarily have to identify or designate every paragraph, but if you're going to designate one of them, then you need to do them all.
That is correct. And
Okay.
most generally, portion markings include your subjects, your titles, your paragraphs, your sub-paragraphs, your bullets, sub-bullets, etc.
Mm-hmm. All right. So that does sound a little bit more complex than it's been in the past.
It's a little more complex. I would think with the different categories that, you know, like I said, there's going to be further information coming down on the two specifics, the basic and the specified CUI. That should clarify things a lot more as far as what categories apply to the particular document.
Okay. And if people have questions, if they're not clear on some of these things, you've got a security manager in your organization normally designated that you can go to with information like that, or?
That is correct. I would direct all people to go to their security managers.
Okay, all right. Now, you know, nowadays with telework and I mean, case in point, I'm teleworking right now, you're in the office, but we're talking over commercial internet at the moment. And people nowadays are jumping back and forth. 1 minute you're on the network, the next minute you're on VPN or you're on commercial internet. So what are some of the things that people need to keep in mind when they're protecting information in this environment where we're changing networks? And
I think the biggest thing is for everyone to remember that our adversaries are continuously attempting to gather information, and they have the capability to intercept our unsecured transmissions, such as your cell phone, your unclassified work phone, emails, etc. So we want to make sure that we're encrypting our network transmissions when discussing CUI and also transmitting CUI. Want to make sure that we're using approved collaborative chat, video, and voice systems when we're discussing CUI. And then also make sure that if you're holding these chat, video, voice systems, and you're having meetings, that you're properly marking and protecting the CUI as required.
And so basically just be mindful of what you're doing and be thoughtful about whether or not you're on the correct network or the correct medium to discuss that type of information.
That's right. We don't want to give the enemy our information.
Right. And I would guess in most cases, if you're in doubt as to whether or not that can be done on an open network, then go to the closed network and do it.
That is correct.
Okay. What are some steps that people should take in the event they're say you're in a meeting and you think someone may have exposed some CUI, what should you do? What action should you take?
Well, the first thing you should do is report your CUI incidents of potential or actual compromise to your commander, your director, supervisor, or security manager immediately. And then also, if you do have a potential compromise, make sure that you're notifying the owner of that information to assess the damage of the information.
Okay. All right. And again, if you're in any doubt, in this case, go back to the owner of the information and check with them. Is that correct? Or
That is correct.
okay. So, sir, is there anything that we've left off? I mean, it sounds like this is going to be something that people are going to have to educate themselves on. They're going to have to take some time and learn about how to use this new system, how to use these new markings, and how to understand and interpret them. What is there anything else that we've missed that that you think is important for people to know?
Well, one of the things we're doing now is conducting training classes for, first of all, our information protection office.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting ready to do some training for security managers as well to get the word out. And then also, hopefully, they're distributing information out to their people to pass the word and get the word out to everybody that CUI is the new buzzword now.
Yeah. So everybody's going to have to get some sort of training. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And is most of that going to be done by your office or?
Well, we are doing the training right now, but eventually around September 19th, Air Force will be providing training through the CDSE, and that'll be your basic annual or initial and annual training per year where you'll achieve or obtain that training.
Okay. And so that'll be like an online training course?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Any other resources that people can go to if they want more information, or who should they reach out to?
They could give me a call. My phone number is DSN 785-0531, commercial 937-255-0531.
All right. Well, sir, thanks for joining us today and helping shed some light on this. I'm sure it's going to be a topic of discussion for the coming months going forward.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me.
All right.